The city was silent, but it was not peace. It was the silence before destruction. The streets lay cracked, towers bent like broken bones, and the air burned red as if the sky itself had turned against mankind. In this dying world, a shadow walked. Where hope once lived, the ruins stretched endlessly, every corner of the city whispering the memory of better days. A tattered cape fluttered from the edge of a broken statue, its stone face shattered, its chest once carved with a symbol of hope, now crumbled into dust. The wind pushed the cape across the ground, dragging it through the ashes, as if mocking the world that had once worshipped a savior. Above, the sky churned. Great clouds, black as smoke, rolled across the heavens, split apart by streaks of red lightning. The thunder did not roar, it growled, low and angry, like the voice of something waiting to be born. Below, fire hissed in the skeletons of fallen buildings. Shattered glass reflected the glow like countless eyes watching from the dark. A sharp whistle broke the stillness. The air trembled, then a streak of light cut down from the clouds. With the strength of a meteor, he descended. His boots struck the cracked concrete, and the shock sent ripples through the street, shaking the hollow husks of nearby towers. The man of steel stood still, cape flowing like a flame against the wind. His face carried no smile. His jaw was hard, eyes steady, as if he knew the storm was already upon him. For a moment, the silence returned. The fires dimmed, the thunder pulled back. And then came the sound, a slow, deliberate step echoing through the smoke. It was not a stranger. It was not a soldier. It was not even an enemy in the way men understood. From the red haze, a shape walked forward, every movement carrying the weight of something unholy. At first, only his outline was visible, broad shoulders, flowing cape, a body cut from the same mold as the hero standing in the light. But as he stepped closer, the truth burned clear, eyes glowing blood-red, a smirk that cut like a knife. The same crest upon his chest, but darker, twisted, the colors drained into shadows. His aura was not light, it was a firestorm of black energy, flickering and snarling around him as though it were alive. The true Superman stood firm, his gaze locked on the figure that mirrored him like a reflection twisted by a broken mirror. And yet, this was no reflection. This was the nightmare made flesh, the evil within given form. The street cracked beneath the weight of their power, dust rising in soft clouds around their boots. For a heartbeat, they said nothing. For a heartbeat, the world itself seemed to hold its breath, caught between the hope of one and the fury of the other. Then, with a sound like the earth splitting in two, the evil Superman clenched his fists. His smirk deepened, and the ground beneath his step shattered into fragments. One more step forward, and the air around him pulsed with raw heat, warping the very light that touched him. He was not a man, he was not even a god. He was destruction. Given flesh, and across from him, the true Superman raised his chin, his cape whipping harder in the storm. He did not smile. He did not speak. He knew words had no place here. The fight had not yet begun, but the fate of the world already hung in the balance. The first clash was near. The first punch did not look like a punch at all. It was a streak of blur, and then the world tore open. Evil Superman moved first, a line of red crossing the space in less than a blink. His fist met Superman's forearms as the hero crossed them to block, and the sound was like a mountain cracking. The street caved into a bowl under their feet. Windows for 3 blocks blew out in a rush of dust and glittering shards. Superman slid back, boots carving 2 long grooves in the concrete, cape snapping like a flag in a storm. He did not fall. He would not. He shot forward in answer, shoulders low, hands tight, the air peeling away from him in white rings. Their bodies met again, chest to chest, forearms locked. For a second they were still, muscles set like steel beams, and then the ground lost the fight and gave way. They dropped into the crater they had made, stones lifting and floating around them from the force that burned between their hands. Heat came next. Evil Superman's eyes lit like twin suns. The beam did not start thin, it was a flood at once. Superman turned his head and the light raked across his cheek, spilling past him into the bones of a tower. Floors went soft and glowing, and the building leaned like a tired man. Superman answered with his own heat, clean and bright. The two rays hit and pressed and screamed, red meeting red, light grinding against light until the air itself began to ripple. The beams broke and scattered, cutting long, glowing scars into the streets. The sky flickered with static as if the world were about to switch off. Speed followed. They shot upward, leaving a spiral of dust reaching for the clouds. At that height, the city looked like a burnt map. Evil Superman came from above, driving a knee into Superman's back, but the hero twisted at the last breath and caught the strike with a forearm. He spun, caught his double by the wrist, and threw him like a hammer. Evil Superman crashed through a billboard and vanished in smoke. Before the pieces had finished falling, he was back, faster, anger turning his face hard and cold. He slammed a shoulder into Superman's chest and drove him across the sky, their wake carving a white path through the red clouds. They hit the side of a tower, punched through 5 floors, and burst out the other side. They moved to ground again, not because they chose to, but because gravity could not keep up. Evil Superman landed first, fist on the asphalt, and sent a wave through the street that flipped cars and ripped up pipes like weeds. Steam rushed out, fogging the world. Shapes of their capes cut through the haze. Then the fog burned away as another wave of heat vision turned it to rain. Superman zipped in close, hands a blur, 2 hits to the ribs, 1 to the jaw, a palm to the chest to break stance. Evil Superman took them and smiled, a thin, cruel line, and buried a fist in Superman's stomach. The hero folded for a breath, caught himself on one knee, then rose into an uppercut that sent his dark twin sailing. He followed fast, catching him midair, and drove him down like a meteor. The impact threw a ring of dust that swept the street clean to bare rock. Sirens far away began and died. No one came. The city had learned to hide from gods. Evil Superman lifted himself from the crater with a lazy ease that did not match the ruin around him. He tilted his head as if studying a stranger. Then he placed 2 fingers on the ground and flicked. The pebble he touched became a bullet. Superman saw it and moved, but not fast enough to stop the follow-up, a rush, a hook, a backhand that turned into a shockwave. The blow sent him skidding across the plaza. He rolled, rose, and braced as his double came again. They clashed in a drumbeat rhythm, strike, block, counter, break, a dance that tore up roads and split stone. Statues fell. Streetlights bent. The air rang like a bell that would not stop ringing. Superman changed the pattern. He feinted high and went low, sweeping his opponent's ankle and lifting at the same time with the shoulder. Evil Superman lost his set for the first time and stumbled. In that narrow space, the hero pressed hard hammer blows to the chest, a headbutt that snapped the air, a takedown that pinned his double against a wall. He held him there with one hand and punched with the other. Each hit a thunderclap. Brick turned to powder. The wall failed. They flew backward in a rain of red dust. Evil Superman answered with something new. He opened his hand against Superman's chest and pushed not with muscle, but with force the eye could not see. The street bowed. Cars slid toward them as if pulled by a tide. Superman felt the drag, dug his heels in, and roared as he pushed back with will alone. The pull snapped, and the sudden release threw both of them apart. They hovered across from each other, capes rising and falling, chests heaving, eyes bright with heat that had not yet fired. For a breath, the city held still again. The test was over. Each now knew the other's edge, the weight of his hands, the speed of his heart. Evil Superman lifted one finger and traced a slow line in the air, a dare without words. Superman lifted his chin. He did not nod, he did not have to. He surged forward, faster than before, not to trade blows, but to take control. He aimed not at his double strength, but at his balance, at the small places between power where a fight can be turned. As he closed, the clouds rolled low and the light went dark, as if the sky itself wanted to see what would happen next. Asterisk, the city was no longer a city. It had become a battlefield of gods, and every clash carved deeper wounds into the earth. Smoke Curled upward in pillars, dust storms rolled through the empty streets, and the skyline broke piece by piece as if it were paper in the hands of two raging storms. Superman hovered above the crumbling plaza, chest rising hard, his cape torn at the edges, soot streaking across his jaw. Below him, the crater boiled with heat as evil Superman rose again, his eyes glowing like twin furnaces, his grin sharper now. Blood on his lip but pride in his posture. Evil Superman tilted his head and spoke without words, his grin saying, "What? Language could not. You cannot stop me." Then, in a blur of black and red, he launched forward. Superman met him, but this time the exchange was not equal. Evil Superman twisted midair, faking high before slamming his heel into Superman's ribs. The crack of impact rolled through the sky like a cannon. Superman flew backward, smashed through the skeleton of a skyscraper, and the tower folded behind him, collapsing into a cloud of glass and steel. But before the dust could settle, Superman burst out of the wreckage, a streak of blue and red cutting through the falling debris. He fired twin beams of heat, brighter than fire, searing the smoke away. Evil Superman raised his own eyes and answered. The two beams met mid-sky, colliding like rivers of molten energy. The clash lit up the ruins as though the sun had returned. But this sun was savage. It shrieked and pulsed, sending shockwaves in all directions. Asphalt melted, cars twisted, and entire blocks shimmered as if the world itself were beginning to burn. Superman forced his beam forward, teeth clenched, every muscle straining. For a moment, evil Superman faltered, his own stream flickering. Then, with a sudden roar, his power surged, darker, heavier, like lightning dipped in blood. Superman was thrown back, blasted into the side of a building. Stone and steel swallowed him. Silence followed, broken only by the soft hiss of molten ground. Evil Superman floated there, smoke rising from his eyes, his grin widening, but Superman was not done. The rubble shifted, then exploded outward in a storm of concrete. From it, the man of steel shot forth, faster than sight, and drove his shoulder into his double's chest. Together they tore upward, breaking through the clouds, vanishing into the storm above. Lightning flashed around them, rain whipping in sideways sheets. Up here, the world was endless sky and fury. They collided again and again, faster than the eye could follow. Each strike lit the clouds in white bursts. Each blow shook the heavens. Superman caught his double by the throat, spun him through the air, and hurled him down. Evil Superman plummeted like a meteor, crashing into the river that cut through the city. Water erupted in a geyser, steam rising in a choking cloud. Superman dropped after him, the surface hissing as he dove beneath. The river's surface, the fight grew even darker. The water churned into chaos, waves clawing at the banks, ships tossed like toys. Bubbles of light flared as heat vision cut through the depths, boiling the river in moments. Superman caught a fist underwater, twisted, and pulled his double upward. They broke the surface in a violent splash, rising into the air once more. Water dripping from their bodies as if the storm itself had been bound to them. Evil Superman's patience shattered. His blows came wild now, fueled not by control but rage. He struck with both fists, hammering Superman across the sky. Each hit carried a crack of thunder, each swing a storm. Superman blocked, reeled, countered with precise strikes, but still the fury pressed him back. For every clean blow he landed, his double gave two. The city below suffered for their war. Entire blocks collapsed as debris rained down. Streets split apart, rivers overflowed, and the sky itself seemed bruised from their fury. From the shattered ruins, a sound echoed an alarm, faint but clear, from some tower that still lived. It was the voice of mankind, crying out from under the weight of gods. That sound reached Superman. For the first time, his eyes softened, his memory flashing. In the heat of battle, faces of people he had sworn to protect, lives that depended on him to hold back the storm. His chest heaved, his body burned, but his resolve tightened. He would not let the world fall because of his shadow. Evil Superman lunged again, faster, feral. Superman met him with a sudden surge of strength he had held in reserve. He caught His twin mid-strike gripped his arm and twisted. With his other hand, he slammed a fist into the chest of his double once, twice, 3 times. The sky cracked with each hit. The last blow sent evil Superman spiraling down, smashing into the heart of the city. The impact carved a new crater, dust blasting into the air like an atomic wave. Superman hovered above, chest rising hard, eyes glowing not with rage but with unshakable will. The city burned beneath him, the storm raged above, but his voice, though unspoken, echoed through the ruins. This ends now. The crater where evil Superman had fallen glowed like the mouth of a volcano. The earth steamed, rubble shifted, and for a heartbeat it seemed as though silence had finally won. Superman hovered above it, battered but unbroken, every muscle aching, every breath heavy. His cape hung torn in strips, his knuckles bloodied from striking his own shadow, yet his eyes never wavered. He knew this was not finished. Evil never surrendered. It rose, always died, and then it did. From the ash, a hand shot upward, searing with black energy, clutching at the broken street. Evil Superman pulled himself free, his suit charred, half his face marked with blood and dirt. But his grin had not died, it had widened. His aura was no longer only red and black. It rippled now with jagged streaks of violet, wild and unstable, like lightning caged inside his skin. He looked less like a man and more like a storm wearing flesh. Superman braced himself, but his double did not rush him this time. Evil Superman rose slowly, almost lazily, as if savoring the destruction. Buildings trembled simply from his presence, glass cracking in waves. His glowing eyes locked onto Superman's, and the air itself began to bend between them. The world caught in a pull too great for mortals to endure. Then, with a sudden cry, they launched at one another. The impact was not sound, it was silence. First, as if the world forgot how to breathe, then an explosion that ripped through the heavens. A ring of force burst outward, flattening everything in its path, cars, walls, entire bridges folding under the pressure. Their fists collided midair. Again and again, each strike making the skyline quiver. Skyscrapers that had survived until now finally crumbled, crashing into the streets below like dominoes. Superman's punches were steady, deliberate, aimed with purpose. Evil Superman's were raw chaos, each swing meant to destroy, not defeat. They spun through the air, trading blows faster than thought. Blurs of red and shadow dancing across the storm-filled sky. Then evil Superman caught his opening. He feinted left, slipped inside Superman's guard, and drove both fists into his chest. The blow thundered like a bomb, hurling Superman into the ground. Asphalt cracked open, the shock rolling through the streets like an earthquake. Superman gasped, chest heaving, his vision flashing white. His double landed on top of him, straddling the crater, fists raining down like meteors. Each strike carved deeper into the earth, each strike heavier than the last. But Superman endured. He caught one fist, then the other, locking his double's arms. His muscles screamed, bones groaning under the pressure. Evil Superman leaned close, face twisted with fury, eyes glowing hotter than suns. For a moment it seemed the shadow would win. Then came the memory again, the voices of those who could not fight, who had no power but their trust in him. Lois's laugh, a child's cheer. The faces of billions who would never survive if he failed here. That memory gave his arms strength. His grip tightened, and slowly, painfully, he began to push back. Evil Superman snarled, trying to break free. But Superman's will was iron. With a roar that split the sky, he surged upward, throwing his double off. He rose into the storm, dragging the fight higher, past the clouds, into the stratosphere where the air burned thin. Lightning flashed. Around them, streaks of fire lighting their silhouettes against the black. Here, far above the world, they clashed again. Blows that could shatter mountains echoed without mercy. Superman struck clean, faster than before, his discipline shining against his double's rage. Evil Superman clawed and raged, but his strikes grew sloppy, desperate, and then came the final moment. Superman ducked under a wild swing, twisted, and drove his fist upward with all the strength left in him. The punch connected with evil Superman's jaw, the sound sharper than thunder. The impact tore across the sky, and his dark twin's body snapped backward, flung like a comet into the atmosphere. He streaked across the heavens in a trail of fire before crashing back down, carving a scar across the earth. Superman hovered above, chest heaving, his body trembling from the battle's weight. He did not chase, he did not need to. His double lay in the crater, unmoving, the storm around them slowly quieting. The air softened, the thunder rolled away, and the fires below began to fade into smoke. Superman descended slowly, his boots touching the shattered ground. He looked down at the figure of his fallen twin, bruised, burned, but alive. For a moment he considered ending it, crushing the darkness before it rose again. His fists trembled with the thought, but he stopped. Superman was not executioner, he was protector. Even against the worst version of himself, he would not cross that line. He turned his gaze to the horizon, to the broken city that still stood despite the storm. His cape, torn though it was, caught the wind. Around him, silence spread, no cheers, no voices, only the heavy quiet of survival. Yet in that silence was something fragile, the chance to rebuild, to rise again. Superman lifted off, climbing back into the sky. Behind him, the crater smoldered, the shadow defeated but not destroyed. Somewhere deep inside, he knew the battle was not truly over. Evil does not die, it waits. But for now, hope lived on, and as the last rays of sunlight broke through the storm clouds, Superman soared above the ruins, the lone figure standing between mankind and the darkness within itself.